Hello friends, it's pleasure to have you back on the channel of Clinical Care Insight. We started a series of lecture on the subject pathology, and in this pathology chapter we already discussed about the introductory part of the pathology. Then we moved ahead and we start discussing about the cellular adaptation and the cell death. In under this chapter we discussed about how once the cell get injured, by you can say the certain toxins or environmental factors, then cell will show certain responses. Cell will show certain responses. Either cell will survive if the injury is, you can say, the normal one, then cell will of course survive. Otherwise cell will choose the two pathway. Cell will choose the two pathway. Either it died by the apoptosis process or either it died by the necrosis process. We also seen that this apoptosis is actually a, you can say, selective process. It is a cell on choice. It's a cell suicide once the cell become non-functional. Or if there is any problem in the cell, then cell will die. That's a programmed cell death called as apoptosis. Then we seen that this, if the damage is lethal or severe one, then cell will cannot survive themselves, and cell will die. But this is the unwanted death. This is unwanted death, and that is called as the necrosis. Got it? So there are two pathways by which cell can attain the death stage. So we already discussed the basic overview about the, you can say, the cell injury. Now in our today's video we will discuss about the apoptosis process in detail. Got it? So here is today's our lecture outline. First we will discuss about that what actually apoptosis is. Then we will discuss about their significance, that why apoptosis is necessary, and why it is necessary to first you can say understand, and why it is also necessary for our body. We will see. Then we will also see that what are the pathways, what are the pathways by which this apoptosis process is done, and what are the stages. Got it? Then we will discuss about the clinico-pathological correlation. And once this apoptosis process, it is not, you can say, channelizing properly in our body. It is not, you can say, happening at a proper time in our body, then it leads to what consequences, which all we will see under the heading of clinico-pathological correlation. So here we begin to understand first that what is actually the apoptosis. So make the heading apoptosis. Now, what do you know about the apoptosis? First of all, as we discussed in our previous lecture, we term this, we you can say get one definition from this word, and we said that the apoptosis is actually a programmed cell death. It's actually a programmed cell death. But till now we don't understand that why it is called as the programmed cell death. Why it is called as the programmed cell death. First we will understand its literal meaning, what actually apoptosis is. So apoptosis is derived from Greek word, one Greek word which means leaf falling from tree. Leaf falling from tree, it's their literal meaning. And you know what? This meaning actually define the apoptosis. So in the case of apoptosis, what is happening? You know that we have the cells, we have the cells, and due to the, you can say, the injury, fine, or due to the some necessary essential function, these cells undergo changes and eventually break down into the small bodies, and here the macrophage will come and digest them. That's what the apoptosis is. Means, you know what I am saying, just mark my words. There is a one cell, there is a two criteria. If there is a some, you can say, mild injury, first thing, mild injury, mild injury, alright. Then if there is something, you can say, essential physiological function. Now what are those essential physiological functions? If we need, you can say, elimination of certain cell in order to form the structure Okay, in order to form the structure, we need elimination of certain cell. So that is done through the apoptosis process. So either due to the mild injury or due to the elimination of certain cell, you can say the undesired cell, it undergo changes, okay, eventually fragmented into the small body, and that small body is digested away by the macrophage. And this all process is called as the apoptosis. Actually, what is happening here? Here we want something. Okay, we want something, and cell is behaving according to that. That's why it is called as the programmed. Already we, you can say, stored the data inside the cell that you have to die in order to, you can say, maintain the normal physiology, normal anatomy of the body. You have to die. That's why it is called as the programmed cell death. Programmed cell death. Now, another thing which is very interesting about this apoptosis process is that this apoptosis process, actually it is guided by the gene. It is guided by the gene, and it is well established. Those genes are well established. Fine. So this is guided by the gene. The apoptosis process, it occurs in a very small amount of the cell. Suppose you know that if there will be the aggregation of the different cells, if there is aggregation of the, you can say, the same type of cell, but there are many, then we call this structure as a tissue. First thing. Another thing is that this tissue is actually basically the, you can say, collection of different same type of basically the cell, but in, you can say, larger number. So this apoptosis is generally happening in a one cell, or you can say the small cluster of the cell, either in the one cell or a very small cluster of the cell. Means this is happening in very, you can say, the small cluster of cells. Are you getting the point? Yeah. Now, you know that here we are wanting, it's our own choice, it's cell's own decision to die. So here we have to put some effort, and that effort is in terms of energy. So this is basically, apoptosis is actually a energy dependent process. It is a energy dependent process, or also called as the, you can say, energy dependent process, and this energy is obtained through the ATP. Okay, we in order to destroy the cell through the apoptosis process, we have to provide the energy in the form of ATP. Fine. Now, and this is basically, you can say, guided. The apoptosis, as I said you, it is guided by the gene product. It is guided by the gene product. This much very information now you get it about the apoptosis. Once again, what we studied, apoptosis is actually a programmed cell death. That we understand that this programmed cell death means if one cell got either the milder injury, or either we want some elimination, certain elimination of the cell in order to form one proper structure. On that very moment, this apoptosis process start occurring. Okay, and it occurs in a very small amount, one cell or either a very small cluster of cell. Then this is the energy dependent and mediated by the gene product. Now the interesting thing is that, which we will see in the, you can say, in the significance, or under the, you can say, the pathway, we will see that this apoptosis is actually a immunogenically silent. It's basically, you write it down, and that's the fundamental difference between the necrosis and the apoptosis, and that is, this apoptosis process will not produce any kind of inflammation. Are you getting my point? We have the general concept that whenever cell get injured, it produces the inflammation. But if cell get injured, now we know some higher level. Now we understand that if cell get damaged, it depends upon the intensity of those damage, how much cell get damaged. If cell is damaged, milder one, then cell will either recover or it will die. if it will die, then die by the two means. The one is called as apoptosis, another one is called as the necrosis. Apoptosis is something which not produce any kind of inflammation, whereas the necrosis absolutely and always produce the inflammation. That's why we can say that, we can easily infer here that the apoptosis is immunologically silent. It's a immunologically silent. Write it down. The apoptosis process is actually immunologically silent. Immunologically silent procedure. Got it? Now, once we understand about the basic idea about the apoptosis, now let's understand that how this process starts inside a cell. Fine? Let's understand that once cell get injury, okay, one cell get injury and this apoptosis process comes, then how it is, you can say, occurring, what's there basically, you can see the molecular mechanism. So for understanding the molecular mechanism, you have to first understand that what are the ways by which cell get, you can say, injured or cell get triggered. What are the ways by which cell get triggered to perform or to do this apoptosis process? So there are two pathways. How much? Yeah, there are two pathways. The first is called as the intrinsic pathway. The first is called as the intrinsic pathways. Okay. Another pathway which this apoptosis have is called as, one is intrinsic and another one is extrinsic. Extrinsic pathway. Extrinsic pathways. Now, what are the intrinsic pathway? Intrinsic pathway, first of all, understand the meaning. Intrinsic pathway is, suppose this is one cell. This is one your cell. Suppose it is a liver cell. Okay, and you know that cell is having the nucleus. Okay, apart from the nucleus, the other cell organelles cell have is the mitochondria. Then there is something free ribosome, and there are, you can say, the lysosomal bodies. Fine. Then the cytoskeletons, and there are many more, and bounded by the plasma membrane. Now, how can you harm the cell? How can you harm the cell? Intrinsically. So the intrinsically, if you provide the radiation, okay, you can see, if you project the radiation to the cell nucleus, and inside the nucleus there is the presence of genetic material, DNA. So DNA get triggered, okay, and this DNA will synthesize certain protein, or you can say activate certain gene, which will eventually causes the cell death. And here what is happening here, due to the intrinsic factor here, this cell will die just because of the cell on nucleus mercy. Are you getting the point? Yeah. So this is called as the intrinsic pathway. Apart from the radiation, the UV rays, of course UV rays also have the radiation, X-rays also have the radiation. This is about the radiation. Then certain, you can say, chemotherapeutic agents, the hypoxia. Apart from that, there are certain misfolded protein. You know that in the case of certain degenerative, called as neurodegenerative disorder, there are accumulation of certain misfolded proteins. Okay, and that proteins also called, you can say, trigger this intrinsic pathway. So the another thing is, very good, misfolded proteins, generally seen in the case of Alzheimer, Parkinson, and one type of chorea called as the Huntington's chorea. So misfolded proteins. These all things can, you can say, disturb the cellular intracellular mechanism of a cell, and thereby cell will choose to die. Cell will decide to die. So these all factors are called as basically the intrinsic factors. These all are called as the intrinsic factor. Whereas talking about the extrinsic factor, for understanding this extrinsic pathway, we have to take one example, and that is we know that the cells are always found in a cluster. Okay, we not found the cell isolated in the human body. So suppose there are 6 cells, and you know, of course, each is having the nucleus, except the RBC. RBC don't have the nucleus, mature RBC. Now, these cells, suppose these 2 cells, okay, or these all cells start dying. It will send the message. It will send the message to the another cell that we all get injured and we are dying. Okay, we are dying, so you should also die. You should also die. This is called as the extrinsic pathway. Are you getting the point? Cell is getting the information from the, you can say, the dead cells or dying cells. Healthy cells receive the information from the dead cell or dying cell. So how it can receive? It will receive just because there is a presence of receptor over these healthy cell, fine, and these molecules, these dying cells, it will secrete certain kind of ligand which will bind over these receptors, okay, and make it, and this receptor, once you know that receptors is intracellularly connected, okay, so once the receptor get stimulated, there is an intracellular signaling to the nucleus, and again this cell also decide and it will die through the apoptosis process. So this is the 2 pathway, intrinsic and extrinsic pathway. Are you getting the point? Yeah. Now let's understand that, okay, fine, once cell will get the information that they have to die, then how it will die, what are the stages? So there are the 2 stages. Again, there are 2 stages. The first stage of the you can say apoptosis is called as the cell death. It is called as the cell death. Now in the cell death, what is happening, as I said you, that once cell get, you can say, intracellular disturbance, fine, then inside the nucleus there is a presence of genetic material, and this genetic material will send the, you can say, they activate certain genes, okay, which will activate the mitochondria, and mitochondria will secrete one kind of enzyme, okay, mitochondria will secrete the one kind of enzyme, and that is called as the cytochrome C. Write it down, cytochrome C. This cytochrome C will eventually lead to the many things. The first changes which is occurring, cell will start shrinking, okay, cell start shrinkage, okay. Not only the cell, even the cytoplasm, it will condense, even the nucleus, okay, even the nucleus, it will condense, the nuclear material, chromatin inside, it get condensed. Are you understanding? Once again, cell get intracellular disturbance due to the radiation, due to the chemotherapeutic agent, hypoxia or misfolded protein, okay, and cell nucleus will get this kind of disturbance, it synthesizes, it activates certain proteins, and these proteins will in turn you can say inform the mitochondria secrete the cytochrome C enzyme, and due to the cytochrome C enzyme, cell start, you can say, condensing. There will be a condensation of the plasma membrane, there will be a condensation of the nucleus, there will be a condensation of the cytoplasm, the cytosol. Now, once these all get, you can say, condensed, but remember the cell membrane is intact, and that's what make this apoptosis process as a healthier process. Because in the case of necrosis, which we will see in our next lecture, in the case of necrosis, what is happening, this cell membrane, it get lethally injured. There are interruptions, so many, you can say, the interruption in the cell membrane, which lead to the, you can say, efflux of certain enzymes. You know that inside our cell, the one organelles we have is the lysosome, and lysosome contain highly acidic hydrolytic enzymes, and if that enzyme will leak from the cell, it will absolutely cause the inflammation. But here what is happening? Cell membrane is intact. There is no any outflux of the any enzyme, so there will be no inflammation, and that is considered as a healthier process. Are you getting the point? Yeah. Now, so there is a condensation, but the hallmark of the apoptosis is that you can say the cell membrane is intact. Okay, there is a integration of cell membrane, but in the case of necrosis, it is not happening. The condensation of the nuclear material, it is called as the pycnosis. It is called as the pycnosis. Check the spelling. It is called as the pycnosis, condensation of the chromatin or genetic material. Now, so by this, cell will get shrinkage. So in the cell death, the first step, what is happening? There is a shrinkage. Write it down. There is a shrinkage of all the cell organelles along with the plasma membrane. Now this plasma membrane, it will change into small irregular bodies, and which is referred as the apoptotic bodies. Which is referred as apoptotic bodies. Okay, and remember, this is also not only done through the intrinsic pathway, it is also done through the extrinsic pathway. Extrinsic pathway also lead to this kind of changes in the cell. Once the mechanism started, the apoptosis started, these changes start happening. So here what is happening? The cell, this shrinkage cell get fragmented, and that fragmented bodies are called as the apoptotic bodies. And some of the apoptotic bodies, they still have the condensed nuclear material. Are you getting the point? Now, the another stage which is happening is cell elimination. Now, cell is already, you can say, get arrested in the death stage. There is a small fragment, but in order to clear this fragment, we have to digest away these cells. That is done through the cell elimination process. Cell elimination process. Fine. Cell elimination. What is happening in the cell elimination? Nothing. You know that there is a fragmented bodies. Okay, macrophage will come and digest this body and eventually leave no any evidence of death of a cell. Got the point? No problem. Now, so this is about the apoptosis mechanism. Once again, we just quickly revise what is happening due to the intrinsic disturbance or extrinsic disturbance, intracellular or extracellular disturbance. Cell get, you can say, triggered. Nucleus actually get the trigger which direct the mitochondria secretes cytochrome C enzyme, okay, which lead to basically the shrinkage of the cells, shrinkage of the nucleus, shrinkage of the cytoplasm, but the plasma membrane is intact, okay, and this shrinkage of the nucleus is called as the pycnosis. Now this, you can say, the condensed or shrinkaged cell get fragmented into different bodies, that is referred as a apoptotic bodies, which is digested away or eliminated away by the macrophage and eventually leave no any evidence of cell death. That is called as the apoptosis process. Now once we understand that mechanism, you can say the significance, now we'll understand what are the related clinico-pathological correlation. What are the clinico-pathological correlation? So now let's discuss about the clinico-pathological correlation. That what is basically the significance of this apoptosis process. So for that, first, which we have to understand, the first heading is embryogenesis. Embryogenesis. Now, you know that during the development, we see in that after the, you can say, fertilization between the sperm and the egg, there will be a formation of zygote, okay. And this zygote eventually, after the so many subsequent division, it will change into the one embryo. Okay, and in the embryo, the one process which is happening is called as the organogenesis. Means there will be a differentiation of the cell, differentiation of the tissue, and there will be a formation of different organs, okay, in the developing baby. So for that development we need elimination of certain cells. Now suppose for example, if we have to form the digit in the small baby, in the embryo basically, then we have to eliminate certain cell. For that elimination, that very elimination process, we need the apoptosis. We need the apoptosis. The one example is in the frog, there is a presence of tail in there. You can say their initial period in the tadpole state, there is a presence of the tail. So for that elimination also, we need this apoptosis process. Apart from that, in the case of, you can say, menstrual cycle, in the menstrual cycle, you know that menstrual cycle is happening each and every month in a females, okay, and in this what is happening, there is basically a breakdown of inner lining of uterus, and that is referred as an endometrium. So these endometrium, which is influenced by basically a hormones, okay, and that is also degraded or break down, or you can say they get died just because of the apoptosis process, okay. Apart from that, there are the another mechanism, and that is called as the immunological mechanism. You know that the T cells and the B cells, okay, these T cells and B cells, it get formed in the bone marrow house, but for the maturation purpose, it goes to the thymus gland. And in the thymus gland, what is happening? There is a, you can say, inhibition of the reactivity, the autoreactivity. Self-digestion is, you can say, disrupted in the T cells, and that is also happening just because of the apoptosis process, the autoreactivity. Now you can easily infer here, if there will be no apoptosis at all in the T cells, then there will be there will be what? There will be a disease, okay, which is referred as a autoimmune diseases. Very good. It is referred as a autoimmune diseases. Are you getting the point? Yeah, that is referred as the autoimmune diseases. So the first, we are talking about the clinico-pathological correlation. If the apoptosis process is not happening in these immune cells, basically which immune cells? T cells, okay, in the thymus, then there will be a autoimmune diseases. Or if suppose cell will not die, now we can write it here, if cell will not die, cell will live a prolonged time, then there will be a formation of cancer. If cell get damaged and it will not die, then what is happening? There will be a formation of tumor, the neoplastic transformation, that is called as the tumorogenesis. Tumorogenesis. Normally, if cell get injured, it will die through the apoptosis or necrosis process, but if it will not die at all, then there will be a tumor formation in those injured cell, and that lead to the tumorogenesis. Apart from it, the very big role which is playing by this apoptosis process is that there are sometimes what is happening due to the environmental disturbance or any other intrinsic or extrinsic disturbance, certain proteins get misfolded, okay, protein get misfolded, and those misfolded proteins start, you can say, accumulating in one specific cell. In the case of Alzheimer, there will be an accumulation of certain proteins called as alpha-synuclein protein, okay. In the case of Alzheimer's, there will be accumulation of proteins. So that proteins is also digested away by this apoptosis phenomenon. Fine. So if there will be a no misfolded protein digestion, if there will be a no misfolded protein, you can say, digestion, then it lead to the neurodegenerative disorders. It lead to the neurodegenerative disorders. Got it? No problem. So this is about the today's lecture. Now let's quickly recap what we studied. We studied that apoptosis is actually a sequential programmed death cell mediated by certain enzymes, okay, with the help of energy. Basically, it is an energy dependent process. Next thing which we understand, that this apoptosis process is necessary for both the things, in the health also or in the disease condition also. Fine. And we also discussed that there are the two pathways by which cell get triggered, that is called as intrinsic and extrinsic pathway, and we've seen the mechanism behind the apoptosis process. Now in our next lecture, we will discuss about the necrosis in details. So thank you for having me. Bye. Have a nice day.